Good morning, everybody. Welcome on in. We've got ourselves a bit of an unusual consultation request today, and I was supposed to do it yesterday, but got stuck catching up with my modeling director because we'd both had pretty crazy weekends, and one thing led to another. Didn't get it recorded yesterday, so up early doing this. It is still well before 6 a.m. here, so I'm gonna bang this out pretty quick and go to work. But it's a good question. So it's a financial question. At what point should I get an MRI on my knee? That's really the summation of what uh, this consultee was asking. Was saying the insurance isn't going to pay shit until I meet an annual deductible of 2,500 bucks, so I'm going to pay the entire 1,400, which is the cost of the MRI out of pocket. He said it's been 6 days. I've seen minimal improvement in my knee, but the seventh day I started seeing something after going to a sauna. So, one thing that might be useful for that is maybe some getting your sweat on might be not a bad idea. It could be a placebo effect, but it could also be the heat loosening up that muscle somehow, or loosening up a ligament or a tendon enough for it to either slide back into a more natural position, or either way, it made him feel better. My logic is that, barring a need for a surgical intervention, knowing exactly what's wrong isn't that helpful, as my course of action won't change. Ding, ding, ding. Absolutely correct. Right. So if you've got a knee injury, right, so that's going to be probably something with a ligament, ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, or a tendon. But in all three of those cases, you're going to have to do the same thing to recover, right? You're going to have to rest it, probably give it ice, and probably just let it heal naturally. Probably the only thing you might want to look into is physical therapy. Excuse me, I guess I'm in my eye. It's early. Physical therapy may be worth looking into because that might be slightly different, but even then, I think the recovery protocols are more or less the same. So I think you're on the right track here. He continues, just would like your opinion if I would, uh, if it's worth getting the MRI, basically. I would say no, off the bat, at least not yet. Uh, if you don't see any meaningful improvement, maybe after a month, consider it. But even then, uh, consider physical therapy first, really. I would consider doing that before doing an MRI. Again, I'm not a doctor, so take my advice for what it's worth. But in general, I have a very low opinion of doctors. They're just above lawyers in my book. They're glorified car mechanics for people who diagnose the problem a lot higher at a lot higher rate wrong than mechanics do, and charge you an obscene amount of money for it. I'm a huge fan of direct healthcare, and I don't blame the problems with the American health insurance industry on doctors mostly. Doctors, a lot of the time, because they are uh, in a lot of debt due to med schooling, which is also fucked up. It's more education industrial complex problems right there for you. But because they're in debt, they have to take out shit tons of liability insurance because they have liability insurance, right? They don't want it to go up, so they're extremely conservative with anything they say or do. They'll often overprescribe, or they refuse to tell you something that's much likely more accurate, out of fears that things could be worse than they are, and then the patient's going to get mad and sue. And that's also an American consumer problem. We are way too fucking litigious in this country. A lawsuit is not the answer to everything. We are a country of lawyers, unfortunately, which is a suboptimal way to run your country. Uh, and if you're surprised that I don't like lawyers, you really don't know me very well. The lawyer and the engineer are natural enemies because the engineer creates and the lawyer tries to prevent creation most of the time. It's usually how that works. Anyway, yeah, I got hurt sparring 3.5 weeks out before my fight. That's just rough. Timing on that is brutal. I feel for you on that one. That's because I know what kind of person you are. You've written to me for advice a lot in the past and probably will again in the future because I think you seem to appreciate the advice I give. But ooh, that is rough. Um, what I would say, so I mean, dude's a data engineer, makes plenty of money, and he could afford this. Like a $1,400 expense isn't going to sink his budget, but it's a question of what's the return on it? What practical value is knowing what knee injury it is? If the protocol for treating it is the exact same no matter what you get diagnosed with. To me, that's extraordinarily low value, if any value at all, because it's $1,400 of your money plus your time that you have to spend setting up the appointment, going to the appointment, catching up on work you weren't able to do while you were at the appointment, and then any follow ups. So to me, I see very little value in taking this. Um, I would honestly, I would go with if you're looking for more practical oriented medical care, I would look at physical therapy first. They may require you to go get an MRI, but I don't think all of them do. Frankly, alternative medicine may work if the sauna made your knee feel a lot better. Maybe there's something there. Probably not a massage, but be I don't know, acupuncture or something like that. I don't much believe in that either, but I don't believe in much in conventional medicine. My healthcare plan is don't get sick. It always has been, and it probably always will be. I really, we have a shortage of doctors and nurses in this country. Their wages would not be as high if there were not a shortage. This is the basic law of supply and demand. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. We have too many people demanding healthcare and an artificially restricted supply of it. When that happens, well, you can guess what happens to prices. They go through the roof. So, basic economics lesson here is avoid using the healthcare system at all costs, or at most costs anyway. You're not directly threatened by your life by avoiding an MRI. The MRI gives you no it's interesting information to know what exactly is wrong with your body, but apart from that, it's almost entirely academic. You have a you don't have a different recovery plan. It's not actionable information. Your action is going to be the same. You already know what to do. You've hurt your knee before. So why go and do it? I think you're absolutely dead on with asking, is this worth the money? I would say it's not. And based on the fact that, you said you could walk, straighten out your knee, uh, it's only been a week since your injury, means you probably don't need surgery, you know, definitely means you can't do a fight in a few weeks, but that you already knew was off the table. So I think you've got the right idea. In general, I would say if it you're asking when the point the what point I should get an MRI on my knee, I would say revisit this idea if in a month and 3 weeks, so 6 to 8 weeks post injury, you still don't see any appreciable, meaningful recovery. Because I think you probably will. It sounds like you already are. But if in another 6 to 8 weeks you're still not feeling any meaningful recovery, maybe consider going to a doctor then. But even then, I would consider going to PT first. They're probably because you don't really give a shit what's wrong with you. You give a shit about how to fix it. That's that's what it sounds like. You're, a very practical person. At least It sounds like that's what you care about more than what specifically is wrong. So yeah, you're getting tests and MRIs. Remember this. So when you are thinking about your healthcare, make sure what you're doing is actionable, right? Knowing what's wrong with you, if it only is academic in nature, if it only tells you what's wrong with you, but it doesn't change what you need to do to fix it, is useless information. It really doesn't help. So I think we have an epidemic, pun semi-intended, of doctors overprescribing tests for people who don't need them, which artificially inflates the costs of those tests and other services within the healthcare industry. Sometimes things are necessary, but I think a lot of the time the medical system it's too risk averse. It's, it's too risk averse and it's not results oriented enough. Just my thoughts. But I appreciate you asking me for this one. I would say, yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. And that's assuming you see no improvement in your knee. And I have a feeling you're going to be just fine. Consider alternatives. Definitely consider alternatives to going and getting an MRI because an MRI is not going to make your knee feel better. It's just going to tell you what specifically is wrong with it, in theory, anyway. So sometimes an MRI doesn't do that, and then they got to go get a second one. And then you got to pay for both, even though one did not produce anything of value. Anyway, that's all I got. For those of you who want consultations, advice, can be anything, diet, fitness, financial questions. This one, is sort of an ROI question, but not really. Any other sort of advice, askbullmuscle@gmail.com. But until next time, make good decisions, y'all. Those good decisions form your actions. Those actions form your habits. Those habits, ugh, it's early. Form your values. Those values form an ethos. Be the guys start through the rough waters of life. I have to go to work now. I don't think I'm going to be going to work for much longer. I'm running out of motivation to give a damn, y'all. Much love. Commit for the hug. Lay me out.